Yep. Okay. Sounds great.
Excuse me. I'll just close it.
Is this like a new rule we just because of one?
Oh, no, I didn't know if you were going back there. Yeah. I know, but I tried to.
Yeah, I was checking.
They're going already. Yeah, they still.
Oh, they're not here anymore. At least I haven't seen them in the last couple ones. He does, like it's his job. I just do it early.
Hey, do you want to send me a little heads up about what it's about? I can introduce it.
Okay, we'll do.
Anyways, you can check that.
Worked a lot by now. I like that should be stuff. We got a couple of committees, don't we? Public Works. Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Tuesday, July the 27th council agenda session. I now call this meeting to order. Could I get approval of the minutes? All right, with no objections, the minutes will stand as recorded. We do have two committee meetings this afternoon. We'll start off with Public Works, and then it'll be followed by Legislative Committee. With that, we'll move into ordinances on final reading. Since we did cover those last week, they are in the minutes. Are there any questions or comments concerning items 5B through H? B through H under final reading, all planning items. Seeing no lights, we'll move now to ordinances on first reading. We have three ordinances here on first reading. And I think, Councilman Ledford, we did cover these in planning and zoning 2 weeks ago, correct?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for that question. I would like to defer to Councilwoman Burrs
Sure,
on her two cases in District 6. And then I would like to make a comment about item F when appropriate.
Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did meet with Ms. Atkins. She will be here tonight. And we'll go ahead and go forward with that.
Okay. right.
Item E, Mr. Jackson, I also met with him. He needed some help in knowing what zoning he really wanted. So I would like to defer. You know what? I don't know that I want to, let me table that.
Sure.
Let me table it and bring it off the table when he's got all his ducks in a row.
All
please.
right, that's item E.
Yes, sir. I
Okay.
will table that. I'll move the table unless he shows up tonight, but
Okay.
I've not heard anything.
Okay. All right. All right, Councilman Ledford. Now, item F, I believe we are going to have in legislative committee later this afternoon. So
Yes, sir. So item
just a brief
F,
comment.
yeah, item F, the alternate version, we will discuss in legislative committee. And I did double check and Ms. Rennick is here also to confirm that the changes we had requested is in the alternate version that is on our agenda tonight, but we will hear this in legislative committee. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Moving now to purchase questions for this afternoon. Does any council member have any questions about purchases for this afternoon? Councilman Ledford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just apologize. I didn't get this administration earlier. Can you give us just a little more background on the Volkswagen Atlases that it's coming out of fleet leasing for the mayor's office?
Yes, sir. As you all may remember, the mayor's office used to use locally made Volkswagens some years ago, and the mayor's office currently uses a Ford fleet, Ford Explorer, Ford electric vehicles, some Ford Focuses. Those vehicles can be replaced or either sold or moved into other parts of the fleet throughout the city. And what we would like to do is get Volkswagens back, locally made Volkswagens back for the mayor's office. And those vehicles are used by multiple members of the mayor's office and staff to do business about town.
Good, sir.
We're excited to support locally made vehicles, though.
All right, seeing no other questions, if you council would now look at your August the 3rd, your 2-week agenda. And let me know if you have any questions or comments. Councilwoman Coonrod. Oh,
Brent,
well,
so the cars that they're using now, are they already paid for or are they still leasing the cars that you're using?
So I think the term lease is a little usually misunderstood. We purchase all vehicles currently at the city and then we internally lease them to departments. So all the vehicles that we have in the city are currently paid for. These would just be purchases to replace the vehicles, which we would make purchases regardless to replace vehicles. We're just choosing to purchase specifically Volkswagens for the mayor's office fleet, and then we will either sell or move those into other departments to replace older vehicles. Yeah, they could still be used by other departments. Some of them have higher mileage than others. And so what will happen is the fleet department will just evaluate, like we normally do. We normally rotate vehicles throughout the city to get rid of older vehicles each year. So this would give other departments an opportunity to have vehicles with less mileage than the ones they currently have. We always think it's high priority to support locally made vehicles. I mean, we need to purchase vehicles regardless, so we decided to make it a priority to get back into Volkswagens. That's a great segue to my presentation this afternoon, Councilwoman. But yes, I mean, again, we have this purchase budgeted either way, regardless if it's Volkswagens or Fords or Chevrolets. We're just doing this purchase specifically to get back into Volkswagens and use the other vehicles throughout the city. Thank you.
Councilwoman Burrs,
Are you back on the 3rd again?
I'm back on the 3rd.
Okay. I will have an appointment to the IDB, which has to be voted on. I'd like that added to the agenda. And hey, Brent. Hello, Brent. You don't have to get up. Just, you have all the material on, is it you or is it Jermaine? Who has all the Jones material for the IDB?
I
That
think
would be
it's
Jermaine Freeman.
Yeah.
Okay, if he, I don't see him here. If he could get the message to circulate it among the council, so that we can vote on it next week.
Yes, ma'am.
I sent it all to him.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you. So yeah, I would like that added. next
Madam
week.
Clerk, could you put on next week's other business, the appointment of District 6 IDB? Well, I say appointment, it is something that we need to vote on.
Right, thank you.
Councilman Ledford,
Are we still on August 3rd, Chairman?
we are.
I just wanted a procedural explanation because for my own education on item D. I don't ever remember seeing a resolution to rescind a resolution unless it was brought forth by a council member. I would just like some education on that since it's already on the agenda. I'm not challenging the item. I'm just looking for educational.
What item is that again?
Item D, sir.
Under resolutions?
Yes, sir. Under community development.
Oh, yeah. Chief, you went over that, or Mr. Sammons? Yeah.
Councilman, this was an item that had been approved by resolution previously. The funding that was awarded to this recipient, they chose not to utilize those dollars. So we felt that since it had already been approved, and in order for us to reutilize those dollars again, that we would rescind the original contract.
Okay. Just a unique item procedural wise.
Yes.
Caught my eye.
You good, sir?
I like Tony's great explanation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sammons. All right, we are moving now to future considerations. Anything, any item on future consideration that needs to be addressed at this time before they move on to our 2-week agenda? All right, I am seeing no lights at this time. We'll now move to departmental report. Chief, I think you have a budget process report for us.
We'll let them get this fired up. This clicker doesn't work, does it? Oh, that's the wrong one. You should have one called Under the Hood.
Say it.
Oh, it does work. Yeah, it does work. All right. Well, so 2 weeks ago, we got to take a peek under the hood, and I know Chairman Henderson loves that more than anything. So we thought we'd come back this week and take another peek under the hood. 2 weeks ago, we talked about infrastructure. This week, and
We're not, we don't have it on our.
oh, you don't have it.
For some reason.
It was,
There we go.
there you go. It was a wonderful segue from Councilwoman Coonrod earlier, because while getting back into Volkswagens is something we would like to do as it was already budgeted, we are much more concerned about employee pay throughout the city. So we want to talk a bit about pay disparities and the service impacts across the city. Our frontline employees are significantly below the public and private sectors for employers across our region. And we'll go through some specific examples, but some of the impacts that we see in the city currently include the inability to hire and retain employees, shortages across all departments, public safety strain with firefighter and police officer shortages. And then in public works, we see things like significant truck driver shortages, which we'll talk about more. I make my clicker work right. There we go. All right. Is it working on your screen when I move?
Yeah.
All right. So some of the consequences that we see from these pay disparities, we have equipment sitting idle that could be used, for example, to suck up litter or pick up brush or different things. We have an inability to service residents in a timely manner. Currently, we have over 4,000 open work orders in the system, and we would love to be working through all these work orders, but we do have an issue with staffing at the present time. We also see increased employee burnout and, of course, increased overtime costs when we have these kinds of staff shortages. And we are projecting that this will continue to get worse if not addressed. So if we look at some of the specifics, you all know we had done the prior administration completed a pay study. Gallagher was the consultant that was used for the pay study. We're in the process of updating that, and I'll talk about that more at the end. But when we look at that pay study and compare to the 50th percentile of the market, we are significantly below the market with our pay plan. The range is 15 to 36% below market, depending on the position. Here are some examples just to show the different ranges. So equipment mechanic 1 is paid 20.5% below market. Electricians are paid 15.8% below market. And then the one that causes a lot of turmoil is truck drivers, right? People that pick up brush, garbage, bulk trash, all those things. Our equipment operator 4, which is a CDL truck driver, is paid 34.84% below the market. So that is certainly an issue that we are looking to address. If we look specifically into a few departments, we're going to look at fire and police and public works in particular. In the fire department, the starting salary is $32,524. This is roughly 25% below the market, according to the Gallagher study. We know that 61% of resignations in the fire department are due to pay, according to exit interviews that we complete. We also know that the attrition rate is 32%, which means firefighters are leaving faster than they can be hired. And this has led to a persistent vacancy number of 25 firefighters over the past few years. And the trend shows that it's going to get worse. The application pool for the fire department shrunk to 166 applications in the recent round of hiring. That's down from an average of 500 new applications per year in recent years. And then you can see that overtime, while overtime is not a huge issue for the fire department, it's still a 45% increase over the past 3 years due to these staff shortages. So we look at the impact of what staff shortages in the fire department mean. One, suspension of extended training activities is something that would occur if we continue to have a decrease in firefighters. Suspension of public engagement events, cancellation of PTO, implementing mandatory overtime if needed. If the current trend continues unresolved, we would face brownouts of fire stations, which means a fire crew is shut down on a temporary or rolling or permanent basis, depending on what staff we have to keep the trucks rolling and the fire stations open. And then lastly, we could see an impact to our ISO rating, which is currently 1, which is the highest rating. If the ISO rating decreases, then we could see insurance costs rise throughout the city. Moving over to the police department, we have some of the same issues as with the fire department. So our starting salary of $36,990 is about 25% below market. In fiscal year 21, we only had 82 applicants for the academy. This is compared to 278 in fiscal year 20 and 710 in fiscal year 19. So that's an 88% decrease in applicants over 2 years. Retirements in 21 are up 50% compared to 2020. And with 50 additional officers eligible for retirement over the next year, we could see an even bigger shortage. Overtime in 2020 was 2.7 million compared to 1.3 million in 2017. You can see that's more than double in just 3 years. Some other issues in the police department is the number of calls that our officers see. So calls per officer are rising. We're up to about 534 calls per officer per year. And for comparison, Hamilton County Sheriff's Office answers about 352 calls per patrol deputy. That's a 52% difference in calls. So Chattanooga police officers on average answer 52% more calls than the average sheriff's deputy in a year. And that's important because currently you can go work at the sheriff's department and your salary would be $2,108 higher than if you are working as a new Chattanooga police officer. That's about 5.7%. In fact, you can even go work at the jail at a higher starting salary, $1,000 higher per year than where we start Chattanooga police officers. So that's definitely an issue. While we see a market issue across all the comparable cities and same size cities in the region, we also have the problem locally with the sheriff's office paying more than the police department because young recruits don't look at benefits and pensions and everything as much as they look at how much they're going to get in their pocket on the first day. And there's some other issues with the sheriff's department as well. They offer vehicles up front on day one. You have to be here a little bit longer to get vehicles. And that's an issue we're resolving as well. The increased workload and the low pay levels leads to more attrition and churn. And, we just see it every year. More and more officers are leaving at that 1, 2, 3, 4 year mark to go to. So we've paid to train them, to make them the best officers in the region. And then they leave to go to other departments around here for better pay. Some of the service impacts, whoops, skipped one. All right, there we go. Some of the service impacts, calls such as burglaries, noise complaints, aggressive panhandling, and vehicle wrecks without injury could be handled by phone or not at all as department focuses on priority 1 calls. Priority 1 calls are always going to be the number 1 response priority. Increasingly long response times when residents call 911, no or limited special event coverage for events like Riverbend, reallocation of investigators to fill patrol vacancies, which would impact our case clearance rate, and no or limited additional training, community outreach, or event attendance. So you can see, just decreasing community engagement would be a negative impact on the police department overall. But there's only so much that the officers can do in the amount of time that they have to work. If we move to public works, some of the issues you'll see in public works is that we have a starting pay for many jobs of $12.60 per hour. And we have local manufacturers starting out employees at $20 per hour. Our starting pay for CDL truck drivers is $29,865. That is 118% lower than the starting pay for a CDL truck driver being recruited by local companies. Starting pay for mechanics at an auto dealership is $25 to $40 per hour, while the city pays a starting salary of $13.75 per hour. Public Works has job vacancies that stretch back more than 2 years with no applicants at all. And an expected wave of retirements could render the city unable to perform basic functions. Survey data shows that most qualified applicants turn down city jobs due to pay, leading the city to eventually hire less qualified applicants that require more training or not hiring anyone at all. As mentioned with some of these vacancies, we've had more than 2 years. Some of the service impacts that we're actually starting to see currently. So Public Works can only staff one 12-hour shift of drivers to apply salt and sand to primary streets in case of a storm. You know, this could carry life safety and economic risks that we probably don't want to deal with. We're also facing a sharp reduction in brush pickup. I'm sure you all have noticed, just as we have, that it takes longer to pick brush up currently. This is because we're having to move drivers to the garbage trucks in order to pick up garbage, which is top priority. We also are going to have to look at less frequent recycling. We're already really, really close to having to suspend curbside recycling pickup due to lack of staff. Because we have to make sure we pick up garbage weekly, because if we don't, yeah, that'll be the worst possible thing for you all in terms of phone calls. So we're already evaluating moving recycling back to once a month or changing the whole program altogether. But those are things that we're already evaluating because of the shortage. The worst case would be, and we're getting to the point where if we lose too many more drivers, we would have to do this. We would have to decrease the frequency of garbage pickup. And that's something that none of us want. You know, we all want to maintain weekly garbage pickup. For the month of June 2020, our citywide services division could only complete 74 open work orders. So this is outside of garbage routes or recycling routes or brush routes, just all the work orders that come in. We could only complete 74 for the month of June 2020. That's compared to 149 for the month of June 2019. And so you can see, starting from 19 to 20 and now to 21, the capacity for us to complete work orders has dropped in half. Some of the costs associated with our staffing shortages, if I can make, there we go. Overtime for 2021, just for garbage and recycling, will cost us $264,000, and that's compared to $97,500 in 2017. So that's up more than 170%. And that kind of overtime, while beneficial for employees in the short term, creates a lot of burnout when you have to work that many hours. The total department overtime in 2020 was $506,000 versus $273,000 in 2017, nearly double. And then the lack of skilled staff across many positions is forcing us to contract within the private sector. One great example of that is for electrician services. We have estimated that we could save $1.2 million per year by filling industrial electrician positions at market rate versus contracting this work out like we currently do. So that's a real example of just pure savings by actually increasing the pay and hiring more people versus contracting out. That's just a snapshot of the three primary departments that affect all of us throughout the community. It impacts a lot of the calls you may get from constituents, fire department, police department, and public works. So we want to make sure that we share this information, remain transparent as we look at implementing pay plans throughout the city. And some of our next steps include updating the Gallagher pay study for the general plan, which was started back in 2019. And we just need to finalize an updated version as of today. We're also finalizing a pay study for the sworn pay plans. They're pretty close to finishing that work, possibly by the end of this week. And then we need to focus on funding and filling critical positions that have life safety or quality of life impacts of city residents. So we're going to shift our focus to really putting energy into recruiting for those positions. Until we have higher pay rates, it's going to be difficult, but we're still going to shift our focus in that area. And then implementing a pay plan is going to be really the only thing that we can do to get us to the market rate and get us where we need to be to hire and retain staff and have essential pay for essential workers. And that's our peek under the hood for today.
All right. Any questions for the chief? Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. So Chief, when we get to this information being shared with the public, I'm assuming this will be addressed in the upcoming budget presentation. Is this type of information, which is boiled down rather easily digested and sends a pretty clear message, and I appreciate you doing this for us because this helps put perspective on where we're at, where we need to go. But will this kind of information be shared with media outlets, paper and whatnot, instead of just relying on what they're hearing inside of the education sessions? Because, for example, I think people need to know that a starting firefighter salary of 32, and if we go up next county, I'm looking at Chief back there, but you probably know as well. What's the starting salary for a firefighter in Bradley County or Cleveland? It's 30.
You know Bradley County?
Uh,
Yeah, 30,
So
I
low-
think 38,
30,
39.
yeah. And that makes a difference when they go through the best fire academy anywhere we have. And when they're looking to stay, that kind of information is really important. I think it's important for residents, constituents to understand. And I hope I see more of that is what I'm trying to say. So thank you for sharing that in such a clear understanding and telling us that services could have an impact. Because the primary function of our city government is to provide these essential services, and I believe that 100%. So appreciate you sharing that and being as transparent as possible. Thank you,
Yeah.
Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. And yes, we will share this with media and with the community.
Vice Chair Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brent, these are all issues I know you're well aware because we've talked about them years and years ago, but it still had yet to be presented in such a way. So I do also appreciate you bringing it forward. The more simple way to present this, the better, specifically for the purposes that Councilman Ledford was bringing up, and that's to be able to explain to the public the impacts of some of these things will be really important for us moving forward as these decisions are made. I do have a question, and I'm assuming that's why I'm asking so that I don't. In the Gallagher pay study, one of the big issues in addressing some of the lower band pay scale is compression. It's not just what will it cost to increase the lower band, it's what happens to the compression in the pay scale altogether on top of that, which is where the most significant expense comes from. Is that what you are looking to get out of going back over the Gallagher pay study to better understand how that may be impacted as we move forward? Because obviously you're presenting this in a way that you want to correct some of these, and I think you have full support to do so. At least I'll speak for myself. So, but the concern is obviously, upscale beyond that. So I'm just curious if that was kind of your intention with the pay study.
Yes, that's exactly right. And so, if we increase minimum wage, for example, to $15 per hour for all new employees, that will put new employees above employees that have been here for 7, 8, 10 years, right?
Right.
So, and Gallagher did when they originally did the pay study, they did look at compression, but it wasn't as finite as we thought it needed to be to really get into the details. So what we did is we took the pay study, sight unseen. That's one advantage of fresh perspective, right? We came in, new administration, and got to look at the pay study for the first time. And we found some issues that we wanted to be addressed by Gallagher. So we had discussions with them, and they are fine tuning that entire process because it really matters where you put people onto the new pay scale. So, basically what they did was create a market rate pay band, and then we move employees to the 50th percentile. But you also have to give people credit for the time that they've spent in their position. And you also have to make sure that there's some, range in between the different series. So if you're, crew workers a good one to look at, crew worker 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have that series of jobs for progression. We want to make sure people who are progressing stay ahead of people that they're supervising. And that compression is exactly one thing we want to look at, as well as making sure that we credit service appropriately. So, you might have a truck driver that was listed as equipment operator 3 for 20 years, and they've only been an equipment operator 4 for 2 years. And then you might have a 4 that's been someone in a 4 for 10 years when they were a 3 for 10 years. We need to make sure that there's, those are pretty close, because the difference between a 3 and a 4 isn't really that great when you look at what they do every day. And we need to make sure people are getting the appropriate credit for the time they've spent in positions that are very similar to each other. So there's all kinds of things like that that we identified and we asked them to go back and look at.
Thank you, Brent. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilwoman Burrs.
Brent, I think these things are terrific. Whoever put these together, they're just wonderful. And I want to second what Councilman Ledford said. We get, or at least I get, a number of really reasonable questions about education, about this stuff. I would love to see some big articles in the paper laying it out just like this, because I have found that when people understand and don't think that things are going on behind the scenes, they may not like it, but they sure understand it, even to the point of not lowering taxes, all of those kinds of things, because it affects their quality of life. I would love, I haven't forwarded any of these because I think that's your prerogative, but I've got daytime and nighttime community meetings set where several hundred people show up at the end of August to educate them on this kind of stuff. I'd love to feel free to be able to flash it on the screen and talk about it, but have them already have seen it so that there's a reasonable discussion. Have you all thought about doing that?
Yes.
It would be terrific.
Yeah, and we'll certainly make sure you all have copies of this. And then we're also this is something we will be discussing with the media. I'm sure we'll get some requests for this information after this meeting is over and they see the live stream. But also we've talked about, whether it's editorial board meetings or whatever it is, to really engage the press about these sorts of things and get the conversation out there.
If they would have good, helpful, simple stuff in a chart in the paper. I know that may not be as sexy or rabble rousing, but I found that most of my constituents, and I'm sure across the city, are reasonable people, want to understand. And then if they don't want stuff cut. So then if you say, look, we're not lowering taxes or we're not doing, money only comes from one place to do this stuff, right? Except for special COVID funds, which aren't forever. So I think if we're just straight up, and I think people understand, they want their quality of life back. So thank you very much. If you could somehow get the papers to, not some big long article with a bunch of little words. Who reads those? It's this sort of stuff that's just wonderful. And congratulations to whoever did it. It's just great.
Yes, ma'am. I would be remiss if I didn't say that Ellis Smith led the charge on putting this
Oh, well,
together.
if it's Ellis,
And,
forget it. Never mind.
But no,
Forget it.
really, this is a team effort. The administrations of the police and fire departments, as well as Public Works and Ellis, everyone worked together to compile this information, make sure it's accurate, make sure that we had all the right numbers from all the right years, and get this information out, because we believe it's really important to share this type of information, because this is a major issue facing the city.
Okay, just so it gets through all me. Ellis, terrific job. Just great job. Let's not overlook the people that aren't tech savvy, that do read newspapers, that they're the backbone of our electorate and our constituencies, and they are sometimes overlooked. So thank you very much.
Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. So if my memory serves me right, it took 16 years of conversations to get us to this point. And the sad reality of it is that we didn't have a council that was brave enough to say, let's do it. And we chose to sit by and we campaigned on it for 16 years. And, we stated the facts about what it was, but we just couldn't get that spirit inside our heart to say, it's time to just do it. let's be bold and let's do it. And let's work with the mayors before now and current, up until you to where now we're really excited about it. And I'm glad that somebody finally had the strength and, to say, you know what, it's time, right? Our communities, they already know the truth of what it is. Like, we can't keep sugarcoating what it is. Because we need our sworn officers out here. We need them, the wages to be competitive. We need to address poverty with, increasing the salaries of our workers. We just gotta be honest with that. Now, the $15 an hour, that sounds great, but at the end of the day, it's outdated. And it's a move into the right direction, and hopefully that it will pass. I'm hopeful for that. But I also just want to talk about the other portion of what the study talked about. And I'm not sure if we're going to address that by just, increasing the wages, but it also talked about the disparities with the wage gap when it come to our women, with men, Black people, white people, like it's a big gap. And the Gallagher study addresses that. So will the administration be able to address that with this budget to make sure that pay is equal across the board? Well, when it comes to race, when it comes to gender, those things.
Yeah, yes, I think the study, the way it's designed to make sure that we pay the same fair wage for the same work, regardless of race, gender, or anything else. It's about putting employees into a pay band based on the work that they do and the job that they're in. And it increases those wages across the board. So I think what you'll also see from an equity perspective is, we may have some lower, traditionally lower paid jobs that have people of color in those positions that'll have a higher increase in the raise that they would get to go into the new pay plan as compared to maybe traditional office jobs that may have less people of color. So, I mean, I do think you see some of that throughout the plan, but the key for us is to make sure that we are putting people into a pay range based on the work that they do, regardless of anything else.
I like how you said that, but I want to kind of talk about that people of color. Because what I specifically want to be addressed with this study is particularly around Black people. And we tend to, not want to address it because we'll put that term people of color, and Black people have historically still continue to be left behind, right? When other people that's grouped into the people of color, they're advancing. So I want to make sure that, Black women, that, their pay is equally to everybody else that's in that melting pot of people of color, compared also to minority women that's with white women as well that are doing the work. And our Black men, like everybody, I want it to be fair for everybody that's doing the work. And we haven't seen that. Even now, if we pull up the records about who's doing what by gender and race, we're going to see the disparities. And even now that's happening. And I know that's a conversation that a lot of people want to steer away from. But if we going to open it up, we may as well rip the Band-Aid on and handle the wound the right way. But I do thank you guys for being bold to make these changes. And I'm sitting up straight about that because I was one that campaigned on it. Our mayor most definitely campaigned on it. And so to me, he's keeping his word on what he's saying that, he would like to see happen to move forward. So that makes me even more, proud to say I'm glad that I supported the mayor who had the vision and want to move our city in the right direction and address these disparities. Because this study, as been sitting on the table even before I became an elected official. So I just really appreciate that and hopefully that it'll pass. So with the things that you want to get done. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilman Byrd.
Thank you, Chair. So, Brent, I run into these issues like everything sounds good and looks great. And I know we can't be the fixer of all things in this one term, this 1 year. It's just impossible. But one thing I look at, little Johnny at home, he wants to be a gamer. He wants to be a YouTube sensation. He don't want to come work in no fire department or no police department. Who want to be a police officer right now? Nobody. I mean, like, our own police officers don't want to be police officers right now. So what do we have in place? Even right now, like I listen to the radio, you hear cyber hacking jobs where you can sit at home and work on the computer and get trained to do cyber hacking. I want to do that. I don't want to come ride on the back of this truck for $15 an hour. I don't want to come. I don't care about your pension. I don't care about that. I'm gonna be a next rapper or next sensation when it comes to these phones and how our kids are. It seems like we'll come up with ideas, but we have no way to connect. But then we have all these kids at our rec centers. We have families that work for the city, and we don't create a pipeline for their siblings and their people to come in and reward them for bringing your people on. Do we have anything in place? Although this is an amazing plan to get started, you know, if you build it, they will come, hopefully. But what do we have in place to make sure that our rec centers, to make sure that our homeless services, to make sure everybody's kind of working together to get there? Because a lot of people just don't want to do this work.
It's a great question. So in 99 days, all we've been able to do is this so far, right? And,
No.
but no, those are definitely conversations we're having.
Okay.
So one thing we talked about, Mayor Kelly talked about this during the campaign. We still talk about it today. We want to make sure we get the nuts and bolts right before we start doing a whole bunch of other stuff.
Gotcha.
Right now, the nuts and bolts are broken, right?
Thanks.
We got to get some things corrected, whether it's process related, pay related, whatever it is. We've got to do the basic things to make sure the citizens are getting what they pay for.
Mhm.
Once we get those things correct, and they're not mutually exclusive. We're going to work on them in parallel path, but we're going to start looking at some out of the box type of thinking around workforce development, around programming at community centers. That's not just your traditional programming, but really does get programming that gets kids excited about doing different things, right? And that will all be packaged together, especially as we start having conversations with you all about ARP spending. With the rescue plan, we have an opportunity to do all kinds of support with nonprofits, with small businesses, workforce development, anything related to COVID recovery. And those are the kinds of conversations we want to have. But also throughout especially with Jermaine Freeman's department, with economic opportunities, we really want to talk about specifically workforce development and what are the kinds of things we can do to get kids excited about, going into some sort of career and creating pathways and getting in. And that's another reason we have the community center model that we're putting into place. We're getting down the path of making that transition from the YFD centers to the new community centers. But that's part of the reasoning for that, is so that we can bring these services out to the neighborhoods, have workforce development in the community centers, have partnerships between the community centers, between workforce development, between companies. You've seen US Express in the news quite a bit lately, right? They're making a splash, whether it's, Eric Fuller wrote the letter about equity. They got some news. He hired Brian Johnson, got some news. He's doing some other things, right? That's the type of company that's interested in coming in and connecting with kids at an early age to get them excited about technology, get them excited about, could be truck driving, all these different, it's not one size fits all. IT talent is their number one issue at US Express. I mean, truck driver is everyone's number one issue, right? But IT talent is a much bigger issue. We can find partnerships with these companies around town to help us invest in building the future for the IT pipeline in this town. And that translates into gaming and cybersecurity and cyber hacking and everything
Right.
else.
That's what I want to hear. Thank you, Brent. Great job.
Thank you.
All right, Chief, I'm seeing no other lights. Your
Thank you,
work
sir.
here is done.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with all agenda items covered this afternoon, we will now adjourn this portion of the agenda. And what happened to our? Well, we were going to go to Parks and Public Works, but our chairman just left. I tell you what, with that, then we will trade seats with Mr. Vice Chair for Legislative Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I have a motion on the minutes? All right, I have a motion and a second. None opposed. Minutes will stand as recorded. Thank you. We've got two ordinances to go over this afternoon in the Legislative Committee. Clerk, would you please read 6A?
An ordinance granting unto Chattanooga Gas Company, a Tennessee corporation, a franchise for the purpose of operating a system of gas distribution and service within the city of Chattanooga so as to furnish gas service within the city to its inhabitants for domestic, commercial, industrial, and municipal general use.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, let's move on to resolutions. 7A alternate version, please.
A resolution authorizing the office of the city attorney to engage the various law firms for legal services in general litigation matters, corporate, transactional, intellectual, property and administrative matters, labor and employment matters, planning and zoning matters, and government relations matters for the period of July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Rennick, will you come to the microphone and if you would confirm the items that we had
Councilman,
changed?
just a moment.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. The item that was just read was about the city attorney's office and law firms. We haven't gotten to the C3 yet.
I am so sorry.
Not a problem.
I will hold that thought.
Ms. Rennick, hold on just one moment, please. Are there any questions on item 7A that was just read? All right, seeing none. Sorry, sir. That is it for the items that are on the legislative committee agenda. That leaves us one item that we want to discuss over some changes to C3 zoning. And with that, Councilman Ledford, would you like to begin, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. I apologize. So tonight on our agenda, we have the alternate version, which I have confirmed with Ms. Rennick, the changes that we were looking for, which allows additional flexibility in the purpose and intent of the new C3 tool. Ms. Rennick, will you go over those changes from the original version so we can have that on the record, please?
Yes, there are several changes. The resolution, the alternative version resolution references that this text amendment is intended to be a temporary zone fix until the Chattanooga zoning code assessment or any zoning ordinance amendments or new zoning tools come into play. The second, whereas in the resolution is an addition, is that city councilors requested the 1-year review report from the date of the adoption be provided to council regarding the performance of this text amendment. I think that's one of the lessons learned from form-based code where we would come back and report on a new amendment. The third major change that wasn't discussed in great detail, but allows more flexibility is a change to the eligibility. And I do have slides on these if you'd like, but this is my last major point. The language in the existing or the initial ordinance stated that the project sites eligible for the zone option for the C3 must have a minimum acreage of 3 acres. And to allow additional flexibility, that was changed to should have a minimum acreage of 3 acres. And the alternate version does show the language of should. So it does allow some additional flexibility for projects to be eligible for the zone.
Very good. I don't think, Ms. Rennick, we need to see the slides. The changes have been reviewed and that is on our agenda for this evening as an alternate version. I have no further questions, Chairman. I'd like to let that stand as it is.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rennick, I believe we have covered most everything already at some point in the past, so thank you very much. But just in case, does the council have any further questions on this C3 item? The amendment? I see none. So let me ask the council, is there any opposition to having this item placed on our 2-week agenda?
This is on our agenda for tonight as an alternate version.
Oh, is this one the one?
Yes,
So
sir.
we added it
Yeah,
initially.
And we've.
Sorry. Thank you
we-
for the
that's
correction.
okay. We're good. We've reviewed it and we did confirm that those changes as Ms. Rennick told us are in tonight's
Got it.
version as an alternate version. So I will be making a motion on that as an alternate version.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir. I appreciate
Yes,
it.
sir.
Any further questions for the legislative committee? All right. Seeing none, we will adjourn to Parks and Public Works. Chairman Nestor.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Parks and Works Committee. Can we approve the minutes? Okay. Madam Clerk. I see Mr. Stone here.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Ordinance final reading. 5A, please.
An ordinance closing and abandoning a sewer easement located in the 6100 block of Hexham Pike as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
See no hands. 6B, please.
An ordinance closing and abandoning sewer easement located in 300 block of Browns Ferry Road and Patton Chapel Road as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
No questions, no hands. C, please.
An ordinance closing and abandoning a drainage easement located in the 700 block of North Market Street as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
I see no hands. Resolution 7B, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to award the combined contracts of W17-023201 and W18-008201 MBWWTP improvement projects, Scheduled A, secondary clarifiers, flow meters, and gate replacement, and Schedule B, MBWWTP EQ units improvements, a non-consent decree project to Reeves Young LLC of Sugar Hill, Georgia, for the contract amount of $8,267,000 plus a contingency amount of $413,450 for an amount not to exceed $8,680,450, subject to availability of funds.
See no hands. C, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to approve change order number 2 for J. Cumbie Construction, Inc. of Cookeville, Tennessee, relative to contract number W16017201, MBWWTP Solid Process Optimization Implementation Phase 2 Thickener Upgrades, a consent decree project for the increased amount of $232,465.98 for a revised contract amount of $5,797,213.98, plus a new contingency amount of $20,000 for an amount not to exceed $5,817,213.98.
No hands. D, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrators of the Department of Public Works to award contract number R20017217, Summit of Softball Complex Improvements for the Easter Tornado 2020 shade structure replacement to Bliss Products and Services, Inc. of Lithia Springs, Georgia, in the amount of $50,286.65 with a contingency amount of $5,000 for an amount not to exceed $55,286.65.
See no hands. E, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to approve change order number 1 final with Integrated Properties LLC of Chattanooga, Tennessee, relative to contract number P2003-201, Chattanooga Police Department Crime Scene Unit Facility Improvements for an increased amount of $37,699.46 to release the remaining contingency amount of $2,300.54 for a revised contract amount of $451,699.46.
Thank you. No hands. 7J, please. Resolution next week.
A resolution authorizing the Department of Public Works to approve change order number 1 for Wright Brothers Construction Company, Inc. of Charleston, Tennessee, relative to contract number S15-007201, Citigo Creek Subbasin combined with sewer separation project phase 1 for an increased amount of $156,575.01 to release the remaining contingency amount of $118,424.99 for a revised contract amount of $2,908,534.01.
See no hands. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We're going to adjourn till 6 o'clock. Thank you. What? Question. Oh, man, she snuck in there. Okay. What's it for? We'll- Okay, we'll let Chair come back on that.
Okay, I'm sorry, what's the question or what? Well, so Councilwoman, whenever we cover our agenda items and before we go into committees, I always make a comment that we have covered all items on the agenda, and that would be the appropriate time to bring up anything. And I'm assuming it's something that's not on the agenda. Is that correct? Well, let me put it before this council, and we've already had some to leave. I mean, if this council would like to indulge Councilwoman Coonrod at this point in time, I'll open the floor. Councilwoman, you got a question? Councilwoman, if you have a question, please answer the question, or we are going to be adjourned. We're going to be adjourned. If you have a question, please ask a question. I'm the chair of this council and I'm guiding this meeting, and I've made a point of order. We're adjourned till 6.